one touch, one heartbeat, and suddenly, nothing else mattered. It started on a bright, quiet morning in a sunlit cafe. I had chosen a small table by the window, my usual corner spot where sunlight pooled across the polished wooden surfaces, reflecting warmth and energy into the room. That's when I saw her, the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair cascading over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles across her cheeks, and soft laugh lines that hinted at years of lived experiences. Her curvy, graceful figure exuded confidence, yet there was a quiet vulnerability about her that drew me in instantly. Her dark brown eyes scanned the cafe slowly, pausing here and there, and when they met mine for the briefest instant, I felt a tug of something I couldn't name. She wore a cream blouse tucked neatly into tailored dark blue jeans, casual yet polished, effortlessly commanding attention without trying. A thin gold necklace caught the sunlight when she tilted her head to smile at someone across the room, revealing slight smile lines at the corners of her eyes. I found myself noticing details I would normally ignore, the soft way her fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup, the subtle shift in her posture as she readjusted in her chair, and the gentle rhythm of her breathing that seemed to harmonize with the quiet music playing in the background. I felt my heartbeat pick up, not from nerves exactly, but from a heightened awareness. The room seemed brighter, sharper, as if the sunlight had chosen to follow her movements. Her presence was magnetic, drawing attention effortlessly, but it was her subtle gestures that held me captive. The curl of her lips when she caught a moment of amusement in her book, the delicate way she tucked a strand of black hair behind her ear, revealing the lightly tanned curve of her jaw and the soft freckles scattered along her cheekbone. There was a pause when our eyes met again. She gave a small nod, just enough to acknowledge me without breaking the flow of her world. Yet it felt intimate, almost like a silent invitation to notice her more closely. The cafe around us faded, becoming background noise, the clinking of cups, the faint hum of conversation, the soft whir of the espresso machine, all secondary to the magnetic pull between us. I became acutely aware of the warmth radiating from her presence, the elegant sway of her posture, and the quiet power of a woman who could command attention simply by being herself. I sipped my coffee slowly, pretending to read a newspaper, but my eyes kept straying toward her. Each glance offered something new, the subtle freckles across her nose, the curve of her shoulder under the cream blouse, the way her long black hair shimmered in the morning sunlight. I realized that I was entirely captivated, not just by her beauty, but by the aura of calm confidence and hidden depth she carried effortlessly. In that single moment, the cafe no longer felt like a cafe. It felt like the center of a story that had just begun, a story where one glance could ignite curiosity, and where a presence could linger far longer than any words ever could. That first glance didn't just catch my attention. It held it, suspended in the quiet warmth of sunlight, subtle gestures, and the undeniable gravity of a woman who had become, somehow, impossible to forget. A few days later, I wandered into a small, sunlit bookstore, the kind with warm wooden shelves and sunlight streaming through tall windows, dust motes floating lazily in the golden rays. I was browsing near the poetry section when I noticed her again, the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair cascading over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes. She was wearing a soft pastel sweater and dark jeans, her elegant posture framed by the sunlight. My chest tightened slightly as our eyes met again, a quiet recognition passing between us. As I reached for a book on the top shelf, I realized she was reaching for the same one. Our fingers brushed lightly, a brief, accidental contact that seemed to linger far longer than it should. The warmth of her hand against mine sent a small jolt through my chest, a current of awareness that left me simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. I noticed the subtle curve of her fingers, the smoothness of her skin, and the faint freckles that mark her hand, details I wouldn't have noticed on anyone else. She smiled softly, a hint of amusement in her dark brown eyes. Her long black hair fell forward as she leaned slightly, and she tucked it gently behind her ear, revealing the graceful line of her neck and the soft contours of her face. There was an elegance in the way she moved, a calm confidence that was grounded yet inviting. I could feel my pulse quicken with each subtle motion, the bookstore's bright, airy environment amplifying every sensation, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet rustle of pages, and the soft scent of books mingling with the faint, floral hint of a perfume. We both stepped back slightly, our hands lingering near the book as if neither of us wanted the moment to end. A small, almost imperceptible tension hung in the air, a mix of curiosity, anticipation, and the unspoken acknowledgement of mutual awareness. The golden sunlight bathed her face, highlighting the soft laugh lines around her eyes, the delicate freckles across her cheeks, and the gentle arch of her brows. Her dark brown eyes held a quiet intrigue, a subtle spark that mirrored my own growing fascination. I cleared my throat awkwardly, trying to regain composure, but I couldn't look away. She offered a light chuckle, tilting her head slightly, and for a brief moment, it felt like the world had contracted to the space between us, the accidental brush of hands, and the warmth of shared presence. Every detail, the curve of her lips, the sweep of her hair, the natural grace of her posture, etched itself into my awareness. We moved apart, still holding brief glances, but something had shifted. That fleeting, accidental touch had transformed curiosity into something deeper, a subtle pull I couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about attraction anymore, it was about connection, an unspoken understanding that lingered in the bright, airy bookstore. The world outside continued, but inside, the quiet intensity of our shared moment became an anchor, a starting point for the slow-burn story that was just beginning to unfold. The weekend brought a cooking class I hadn't planned to attend, yet there she was again, the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair flowing over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes. She wore a soft sage green blouse tucked into dark trousers, her posture both relaxed and elegant. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen's wide windows, bouncing off stainless steel counters and warm wooden shelves, creating a bright, inviting atmosphere. As I navigated the crowded room, I found myself near her station, chopping vegetables on the same counter. Each movement became a delicate dance of proximity, our arms occasionally brushing, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the aroma of fresh herbs, and the soft warmth radiating from her as we moved around each other. A subtle tension hummed under the surface, a slow-burn awareness that every accidental touch carried weight. When she reached for the same spice jar I had my hand on, our fingers grazed lightly. The simple contact sent a thrill through me, a quiet acknowledgement of attraction I couldn't hide. She smiled softly, just enough to break the formality of the class without being overt. The sunlight highlighted her long black hair and the soft freckles across her cheek, emphasizing the depth of her mature beauty. Her curvy, graceful figure leaned slightly forward, focused on the task, yet somehow aware of the magnetic pull between us. The instructor's voice faded into the background. I became attuned only to her, the subtle tilt of her head as she measured ingredients, the gentle brushing of her hair behind her ear, the soft rise and fall of her chest. Each movement carried a quiet intimacy, a sense that proximity could communicate more than words ever could. I noticed the faint laugh lines around her eyes when she smiled at a small mishap, the slight curve of her lips, and the way her dark brown eyes held both confidence and approachable warmth. At one point, she stepped closer to reach for a knife, and the small, accidental touch of our elbows sparked a shiver I could not ignore. I felt the warmth of her arm, the softness of her skin, and the subtle heartbeat under the pulse of our contact. It was electric yet unspoken, an intimacy rooted in simple, everyday movements. The bright kitchen, with sunlight glinting off surfaces and highlighting the vibrant colors of fresh ingredients, became a stage for this quietly building tension. By the end of the class, there was a lingering awareness, a quiet bond formed through shared space, light touches, and subtle, unspoken gestures. She had drawn me in again, not through words but through presence, grace, and effortless allure. Each accidental brush, every shift in posture, every soft glance created a rhythm I could feel, a pull I could not resist. I realized that this slow, intentional attraction was becoming impossible to ignore, each moment layering anticipation on top of the last, paving the way for something deeper yet to come. After the cooking class ended, the bright sunlight streaming through the windows felt warmer, somehow more intimate. She approached me with that familiar, graceful ease, the 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair cascading over her shoulders, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes that seemed to observe the world with both confidence and curiosity. She wore a light blue blouse tucked neatly into a flowing skirt, casual yet elegant, her long black hair catching the late afternoon sun. "I know a cafe nearby," she said with a soft, inviting smile. "You might like it." Her words were casual, yet the gentle way her lips curved, the warmth in her dark brown eyes, made it feel like an intentional gesture, an invitation into her world. I nodded, slightly hesitant, but unable to resist the pull of her presence. Walking side by side, the city streets bright and vibrant in the afternoon light, our movements naturally aligned. Occasionally, her arm brushed against mine, subtle and deliberate enough to make my heart skip a beat. Each touch was fleeting, but it carried a weight, a silent communication that we were both aware of the growing connection. The warmth radiating from her, combined with the soft scent of her perfume and the sunlight glinting off her long black hair, made the ordinary walk feel extraordinary. We arrived at a small cafe tucked between sunlit streets, with large windows allowing sunlight to pour into the warm, cozy interior. The bright wooden tables reflected the golden afternoon light, casting subtle highlights across her face. She guided me to a table by the window, her curvy, graceful figure moving with effortless elegance. I noticed the faint freckles on her cheeks, the soft laugh lines framing her smile, and the way her long black hair fell perfectly, brushing against her shoulders as she sat at a. Over steaming cups of coffee, the conversation flowed easily. Books, small life stories, laughter shared in soft bursts. Occasionally, our hands brushed as she reached for her cup or gestured lightly while speaking. Each accidental touch lingered in memory, a delicate tension that was both thrilling and comforting. The cafe's bright, cheerful atmosphere, mingled with the warmth of the sunlight and the subtle aroma of roasted coffee, created the perfect backdrop for this slowly unfolding connection. Her dark brown eyes met mine often, carrying unspoken meaning, curiosity, warmth, and a quiet invitation for trust. The more we spoke, the more I felt that this gentle, deliberate intimacy was building into something meaningful. There was no rush, no pressure, just a subtle understanding growing with each shared smile, each light touch, and every soft glance. By the time we left the cafe, I realized that the small invitation had done more than bring us together physically. It had opened a space for trust, closeness, and emotional curiosity. Her presence was becoming essential, and the subtle magnetic pull between us was undeniable. What had started as simple glances and accidental touches was evolving into a quiet, compelling intimacy, one that I couldn't stop thinking about even as the sun shone brightly on the bustling city streets around us. The day had been bright, full of warmth and laughter, but as we stepped out of the cafe, dark clouds rolled across the sky faster than I anticipated. Within moments, a light rain began, each drop sparkling like tiny crystals in the afternoon sunlight. She, my 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes, paused for a moment, tilting her head as if measuring the sudden downpour. She wore a soft pastel sweater and a flowing skirt, the fabric starting to cling slightly in the rain, yet she moved with that familiar, graceful confidence that captivated me instantly. I reached into my bag and pulled out my umbrella, holding it above us. She stepped closer so that our shoulders brushed, a subtle, deliberate closeness that made my pulse quicken. Her dark brown eyes met mine, carrying a soft, amused sparkle, and the faint freckles across her cheeks glowed under the bright, diffused light filtering through the clouds. The warmth of her presence, even in the cool rain, felt grounding and magnetic. As we walked, our hands occasionally touched, brushing against each other when adjusting to avoid puddles. Each contact was brief yet electrifying, our fingers grazing, her elbow brushing mine, but it was enough to make the world around us dissolve into bright reflections of sunlight on wet pavement. Her long black hair clung slightly to her neck and cheeks, and I noticed the soft sway of her skirt as she moved, her curvy, graceful figure exuding effortless elegance even under these spontaneous circumstances. The city around us seemed alive, the sunlight breaking through clouds, bouncing off rain-slick streets and parked cars, casting bright reflections everywhere. I could hear the soft patter of rain on the umbrella and the distant hum of traffic, but these sounds became secondary to the tension between us. Every subtle glance, every faint smile, every brush of skin against skin amplified the emotional intimacy building quietly between us. She leaned slightly toward me to avoid the wind, and for a moment, our hands met under the edge of the umbrella. The contact lingered longer than it needed to, and I could feel the pulse of her warmth against my palm. There was something delicate, something thrilling about this accidental proximity, the spontaneity of the rain amplifying the closeness, creating a small, private world for just the two of us. As we reached a brighter, sunlit stretch of the street, we laughed softly at the situation, sharing a moment of light-hearted relief. But underneath the laughter, the magnetic pull of one another remained undeniable. The combination of rain, sunlight, and shared space had created a heightened awareness of each other's presence. Every detail, the curve of her shoulder, the subtle freckles across her face, the warmth radiating from her hand, was etched into my senses, a slow-burning memory that would stay with me far beyond this fleeting encounter. By the time the rain eased and we parted ways, I knew that our connection had deepened. The accidental touches, the shared vulnerability in the sudden downpour, had created a bridge of intimacy that went beyond words, leaving a lingering awareness of her presence in every sense. One unexpected rainstorm had brought us closer than any conversation ever could, and the memory of it made my heart ache and race at the same time. We found ourselves walking through a quiet park, the sun high and bright, reflecting off the green grass and the sparkling water of a small fountain nearby. The air was crisp, carrying faint scents of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. She, my 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes, walked beside me, her pastel blouse catching the sunlight, skirt swaying gently with each step. She radiated calm confidence, yet there was an undercurrent of warmth, a softness in her gaze that made my chest tighten in anticipation. We paused at a bench overlooking the fountain, and I could sense her hesitating slightly. Without words, she reached out, lightly placing her hand on mine. The simple contact sent a ripple of awareness through my entire body, a quiet electricity that made the world narrow down to the warmth of her skin against mine. I could feel the subtle pulse of her heartbeat through the connection, steady yet compelling, and for a moment, everything else, the noise of the park, the sunlit trees, the distant laughter of children, faded into nothing. Her long black hair brushed against my arm as she leaned slightly closer, the faint scent of her perfume mingling with the natural smells of the park. The sunlight illuminated the soft laugh lines at the corners of her eyes and the delicate freckles across her cheeks, emphasizing her mature beauty. Every detail, her gentle smile, the graceful curve of her shoulder, the quiet elegance in her posture, felt amplified in this moment of shared intimacy. We didn't speak immediately. Words seemed unnecessary. The touch itself conveyed a depth of emotion that neither of us had expressed verbally. My fingers curled slightly around hers, and I felt a magnetic pull, a sense of connection that was grounding yet exhilarating. The bright park, the sunlight reflecting off the fountain, and the subtle rustle of leaves created a serene, almost magical backdrop for what was happening between us. Her dark brown eyes met mine, and there was a flicker of vulnerability mixed with quiet confidence, a silent acknowledgement that this was significant for both of us. She shifted slightly, her fingers tightening just a fraction on mine, and I felt an involuntary shiver of anticipation. The tactile awareness of her presence, the gentle warmth of her skin, and the rhythmic pulse of her heartbeat created a profound emotional intimacy. Time seemed to stretch in that moment. The world outside our touch disappeared, leaving only the connection between us. That one deliberate, gentle touch carried more weight than anything spoken or imagined. It was a declaration of unspoken trust, a bridge between curiosity and something far deeper. The bright sunlight, the clear sky, and the soft murmur of the park became a perfect stage for the quiet revelation that I was irrevocably drawn to her, not just by beauty, but by the magnetic, soulful presence she carried so effortlessly. By the time she withdrew her hand, the effect lingered, an invisible tether of warmth and connection that made every subsequent glance and gesture feel charged. One touch had narrowed my world, made her the center of it, and left me yearning for more, not in impatience, but in quiet, exhilarating anticipation. The sun was beginning to lower in the sky, painting the park in warm, golden hues. The fountain's water sparkled under the sunlight, and the trees cast long, bright shadows across the neatly paved paths. She, my 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, subtle freckles, soft laugh lines, curvy graceful figure, and dark brown eyes, walked beside me with that effortless poise that had captivated me from the start. Today, she wore a soft lavender blouse and well-fitted trousers, her long black hair catching the sun's rays as it flowed gently over her shoulders. Every detail, the slight smile lines at the corners of her eyes, the delicate curve of her lips, the subtle freckles on her cheeks, made her presence quietly magnetic. We walked side by side, our steps in easy rhythm, the occasional brush of her hand against mine sending a faint spark each time. There was no rush, no urgency, just the peaceful companionship that had been quietly building over our shared encounters. The golden light illuminated her dark brown eyes, giving them a warm glow that mirrored the calm certainty I felt in this moment. Her subtle laughter at a passing child's antics, the gentle way she gestured when speaking, and the quiet strength in her posture all reinforced the deep respect and admiration I felt for her. We paused on a bench by the fountain, its bright waters glimmering like scattered diamonds in the sunlight. She leaned slightly toward me, and our hands found each other naturally, fingers intertwining with gentle ease. The warmth of her hand, the quiet pressure of her touch, and the sensation of her pulse under my fingers carried a profound intimacy that needed no words. I could feel her heartbeat, a steady, calm rhythm that somehow anchored me. In that shared silence, the world felt perfect, narrowed to the simple presence of each other. Our conversation was soft, reflective, filled with laughter and subtle honesty. She shared stories of her life with a gentle vulnerability, and I responded with openness I hadn't shown before. Each glance, each touch of her hand, each soft brush of her hair from her face carried emotional depth. The park, bright and sunlit, with the gentle rustle of leaves and the distant hum of city life, became the serene backdrop for this unfolding connection. As we walked away from the fountain, hand in hand, I realized that everything that had led to this point, the accidental touches, the shared glances, the spontaneous rainstorm, the quiet afternoons in cafes, had created a bond that felt natural and unforced. There was no need to rush. The connection had grown organically, patiently, and beautifully. Her dark brown eyes met mine again, and in that brief, lingering gaze, I saw understanding, warmth, and quiet desire mirrored back at me. The golden light highlighted her soft laugh lines and subtle freckles, emphasizing the mature beauty and confidence that made her presence so compelling. We walked slowly, side by side, laughing at small things, savoring the comfort of each other's company, and feeling the magnetic pull that had always existed but had now found its quiet resolution. By the time we parted that day, it was with a sense of peaceful fulfillment. One touch had indeed changed everything, transforming curiosity into trust, fascination into emotional intimacy, and fleeting moments into a connection that felt enduring. In the bright warmth of that afternoon, I knew that her presence had become an essential part of my world, and I had become a part of hers, subtly, naturally, and completely.